Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin in 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program will begin in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. Our program is about to begin. Please silence your electronic devices. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome 2015 ALEC National Chairman, Texas Senator, Phil King.
Good morning. Everybody awake? So it's Friday at ALEC, and we're all feeling that it's Friday at ALEC. And I know we had state nights last night. Texas was excited. We had 160 people at Texas Night out at the fort, so that was a big event for us. And I know there were huge events everywhere else. And I know we're missing a few Texas people this morning that went to the hospitality suite after that. So that's the way it works. But anyway, I want to welcome everybody this morning. I get the really exciting privilege of introducing someone. You know, they say you're not supposed to have live heroes in life, but I do. I have a couple of them, and one of them is Rick Perry. And so I was honored to, let's go ahead and give him an applause before we get started. He has one of those public service career records that when you look at it kind of make you feel like you've really failed in life. It started at Texas A&M University, there we go, and where he was a Yale leader. And I know that in this room doesn't really mean anything, but at College Station and really across Texas, it's kind of like graduated valedictorian, top of the football team, and then the real big thing is that being a Yale leader. After that, it was a stint in the Air Force, where he flew governor. Was it C-130s? Am I remembering right? C-130s. I know he flew in tactical situations in both Europe and in the Middle East. He left the Air Force as a captain after 5 years of active duty service. And I know he came back to Paint Creek, Texas. Now, I will tell you, he was raised in a very rural setting, and even if you're from Texas, you still don't know where Paint Creek is. But Haskell County, and I know he returned there and spent quite a while deciding where he was going to go, and I actually know he actually thought of entering the ministry at one point. And finally, he moved toward public service, did a few tours in the Texas House of Representatives, and then after that, the Texas Ag Commissioner, and in Texas, that's a statewide office. And of course, ag is very important for us. Cotton and all the other grains and everything else is so important to our state, as it is most of yours. After the Ag Commission, he was elected lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor in the state of Texas is the president of the Senate. And I will say this since Greg Abbott, our governor, isn't here, the lieutenant governor really is the most important, most powerful position in the state. And I can only say that because I know Greg didn't watch it online or anything. But it really is. And he was the first Republican lieutenant governor, president of our Senate, since Reconstruction. He stayed there for one term and then elevated in 2000 to governor of the great state of Texas, where he became the longest serving governor in Texas history. Yeah. Things were going great. Texas was doing wonderfully, but then he just had to go run for president. And so governor went away, and President Trump tapped him to be the energy secretary, which with his background in oil and gas and was just a perfect position for him and for America. Served up there, of course, and now he's back in Texas. As soon as he came back, we started strongly encouraging him and to think about running for office or taking some big leadership role. And I remember when I mentioned that to him, he told me, Anita says, it's finally time for me to go earn a living. And so I think that's what he's doing now. As well, he's no longer in Paint Creek, but he's back in the country and living on a mountaintop. And so with that, by the way, let me just tell you the most important thing about him. This is a man who is faithful to Jesus Christ. I remember asking him one time what he enjoyed the most about his time in the cabinet. And he said, you know, really, it was those intimate capital Bible studies we used to have with the cabinet members. He said those were just such special. I can tell you that every part of his life, the entire time I've known him, he's been faithful to his family, he's been faithful to his community, and he's just been an honorable man before God in every respect. And that's why he is one of my very few living heroes. Governor Rick Perry.
Senator, thank you. Phil King, dear friend and a just absolute stalwart in the Texas Senate now. And how long have you been in the public service business? 26 years. You're just about to get off probation. That's a good thing. Governor Polis, thank you for being here today, and I know you're going to welcome folks to the great state of Colorado. I just shared with him that there's a love-hate relationship between Texans and Coloradans, I'm pretty sure. We never had any money. I grew up on a dryland cotton farm, but every August when we got our crops kind of laid by, my dad would load us up in whatever old car we had with one of those metal ice coolers with enough food to get us halfway between Texas and Colorado, and we'd stop at some little motor coach thing and a little motel, spend the night, and which was a big deal for us to get, stay in a motel. And then we drove on to Estes Park to a little place, they were called Vogel's Cabins. I have no idea whether they're still there, Vogels. But it was the most beautiful, wonderful, and let me tell you, August in Colorado, pretty hard to beat. So anyway, God bless you for what you do there. And so I think part of my role here today is I want to start, just take a few minutes and ask God to bless this if I can, and if y'all will, I'll quickly ask God to kind of give us a little bit of blessing and a veil of safety, and if you will, just bow your head. And Father, we thank you for letting us be here today, and thank you for giving us the opportunity to be in public service. And we recognize that the key word here is servant. This is about you. This is about your citizens of the world, and for us to serve them. And we ask you to give us wisdom. Give us I think in Matthew, Jesus told us to have a shrewd mind and an innocent heart. And we ask you for that blessing today. Amen. Man, you covered a lot of country there. I need to clear up a few things. I grew up 16 miles from the closest place that had a post office. And that little place, as Senator shared with you, wasn't on a map. Now, with that said, when I got to be the governor of the state of Texas, I called up the chairman of the Texas Department of Transportation, and that was in the days when we still had road maps. And I said, right there on Farm to Market Road 618, I want you to put a dot and Paint Creek. I literally put Paint Creek on the map. So, we had a little school out there in the, as I shared with you, 16 miles from the closest place had a post office. There was a school out there, Paint Creek Rural School. And I always, when I was running for office first time for state rep, I would, you learn some lessons in life. And one of the lessons that you learn in life, Governor, is you need to be humble. You need to be a person of humility. And I had a little hard time learning that lesson, frankly. I'm not going to lie to you. And I would tell people I graduated in the top 10 in my high school class. Until they figured out, and somebody would ask, well, how many were in your high school class? 13. But it was a wonderful place to grow up in a fabulous part of the state, and wonderful, just Christian, foundation people. My dad was on the school board My dad was a county commissioner. My Sunday school superintendent was also my scoutmaster and the superintendent of Sunday schools, chairman of the school board, my scoutmaster. So it was one of those little communities that so many of you have either grown up in or represent now in your districts, and we have a fabulous opportunity. But I want to share with you. Phil said something that was really important, and we had a devotional before we started here today. Capital Ministries. Ralph is standing up while he's sitting down. Ralph is 7 foot tall. Ralph Drollinger, would you stand up just a second? Ralph is the head of Capital Ministries. His wife Danielle is there. Thank you for being here today, for what you do. And again, the senator shared with you, and in all seriousness, we had never had, it's been 100 years since the country had a cabinet members Bible study in Washington, D.C. Ralph put that on. He teaches the congressional delegation and the senatorial delegation Bible study every, I think, Tuesday and Wednesday, if my memory serves me correct, still today. Democrats, Republicans, everybody comes together. And it's one of those, I will suggest to you, and it's why I think it would really serve you all well in your state capitals, is that although, we may play on different teams, but we can show Washington how you get along and how you work together without being evil and mean and nasty. And I think that's one of our goals as state legislators, is to show Washington. I'm kind of a big 10th Amendment guy. If it doesn't say specifically in that Constitution it's saved for the state or for the people, we can show them how to legislate, how to serve, how to get along, how to reach across the aisle. I mean, Governor, you and I, we play on a different team, but we're friends. And I think that's important for us as servants, because from a biblically based, and there are people that get out there and say, well, they've got separation of church and state. And I said, okay, I'm all about that. I'm not for a theocracy. The people who are out there promoting a Christian nationalist view, I'm sorry, you're just wrong. Y'all can clap to that, because we need to be clear about that folks who are out pushing a Christian nationalist foundation. That's just wrong. So the point is, have a good biblically based principles, and that Bible's a checklist. Senator shared with you, I was a pilot in the United States Air Force. I used a checklist. They drove that into my brain at pilot training and afterwards. Use your checklist. Checklist will save your life. That Bible is a good checklist. It'll tell you not only how to live your own life and how to run your own life, it'll tell you how to run your business and commerce. It'll tell you how to run the state. You look at those principles in there and you check off on those, it'll save your life, literally and figuratively. And so that's an important message, I think, that we as, conservative legislators from across the... Governor, a lot of people don't remember, I never met a Republican until I was 27, 28 years old, or anybody that would admit to be one in my part of the world. We were rural conservative Democrats. I was elected 3 times to the State House as a Democrat. Oh man, it's full up admission time. I was Al Gore's statewide co-chairman in 1988. Help me, Jesus. I saw the light. I was politically saved in 1989. And I stepped across the aisle, and I made both political parties very happy when I became a Republican, Governor. My point is, That ought to be our attitude today. As we go forward, you know, we can fight like cats and dogs about our principles, about those issues, you know, and that's okay. But when it's over, let's come together as Americans. One side's not any better than the other. But we have a responsibility to serve, to be selfless in that service. That's a biblical-based principle that will serve all of us well. God bless you, and thank you for letting me come.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Executive Vice President Policy and ALEC Chief Economist, Jonathan Williams.
Well, good morning, ALEC friends and partners. It has been an incredible week at the ALEC 51st annual meeting here in Denver, Colorado. And as many of you have told us throughout the course of the week, this has been an incredible patriotic shot of adrenaline once again in an ALEC annual meeting, hasn't it? And of course, this has been all about principled policy solutions for the states. It is at ALEC, we don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, Libertarian, or Vegetarian. If you're all about good public policy, we welcome you to the ALEC family. And what's going on right now, of course, in Washington is a deep inaction. We see a potential tax Armageddon coming with the upcoming expiration of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, the first federal tax reform in 31 years since the Reagan era. But you contrast that with the action in the states, whether it's the 22 states that have cut income taxes across the country over the last several years, whether it's the huge movement towards hospital price transparency and bringing price signals and actual markets to healthcare, or whether it's the education freedom movement and how we're having dollars follow parents and empower parents and kids. It's an incredible just juxtaposition of federal versus state. In a moment, I have the distinct honor to bring up a couple of individuals I deeply respect. We have Governor Jared Polis here, the 43rd Governor of Colorado. Thank you, sir, for being with us. Congratulations as well on being elected the new president of the National Governors Association. We're going to be very proud to have you in that role. The thing as an entrepreneur, though, and something that's key to ALEC and the public and private sector partnership, as we all know at ALEC, is his background as a business leader and now as a governor. But the thing I think I appreciate as a policy person the most about Governor Polis is he has broken the ceiling when it comes to getting a really breakthrough. We have the Texas delegation and we have the Colorado delegation here, and those are the first two states out of the gate to enact hospital price transparency. But also as someone who cares deeply about income taxes, and all of you cutting income taxes, becoming more competitive in your states, Governor Polis has spearheaded income tax reductions here in Colorado, and not just income rate reductions, he has called for the complete elimination of the personal income tax here in Colorado. How about that, ladies and gentlemen? And then our dear friend, Dr. Arthur Laffer, someone who I've had the pleasure of working with for the last 17 years, working on the Rich States, Poor States project with our dear colleague, Stephen Moore. Someone who was for Ronald Reagan before it was cool to be for Ronald Reagan, as an advisor, as Governor Reagan. But then again, wasn't it always cool to be for Ronald Reagan? I think it was. But the thing about Dr. Laffer is he has changed not only the way America thinks about economics and tax policy, but the way the world thinks about economics and tax policy. But I think I appreciate the most, outside of his personal friendship with ALEC, is that he cares so deeply about the states that he'll call us and say, what's happening in Missouri on income taxes? What's happening on price transparency in Ohio? This is someone who cares deeply about the fights that all of you are in every single day in the trenches at the state level. And as he'll remind us all, as we invite him up to the stage here in a moment, this is not about Republican or Democrat or even left versus right. This is about up versus down when it comes to the future of our states. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Governor Jared Polis and Dr. Arthur Laffer.
So, before we sit down and chat, I want to welcome you all to our great state of Colorado. If you we hope that you extend your stay through the weekend, enjoy our mountains. If you have need any ideas about what to do, we have a couple great Colorado tables here, our legislators, and we have Democratic and Republican legislators here. They're happy to share their ideas. Of course, all their best ideas just happen to be in their districts for what you ought to be doing, but you know how that goes. But we have a great state, and I truly hope that not only has Denver treated you well, but we're proud to host you and hope you get to extend your stay for the next few days through the weekend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Sit down and I'll just talk. Got it. Everyone, I have to lower the microphone after everyone speaks now, except Bob Reich. Thank God I can, you know, it's really fun being here. And Lisa, thank you very much for having us here. It's just great. Lisa told me I shouldn't tell it, but I'm going to tell my joke, because if I didn't tell my joke, I'd lose my reputation as being really one of the worst joke tellers ever. You know, I was with my doctor last week, and my doctor said, you know, Arthur, it's ill-advised ever to take a laxative and a sleeping pill at the same time. But if you do, you will sleep like a baby. Just had to do it. You know, I've known Jared Polis from the very beginning. He was an intern in my office. I was 1988, you were 13 years old. Intern, he's the greatest ever, fun guy all the way. I could talk about him for hours. In fact, I have at times. But he's a serial entrepreneur. He went to Princeton at the end of his junior year in high school. Just talk about academic. That's pretty amazing. Serial entrepreneur, I think he started something like 9, 10, 12 companies. I've been on the board of every single one of them. He's a phenomenal person doing that. As a congressman, I'm going to tell one inside story, because all of you understand inside stories in politics. They sometimes don't mesh with the public persona. The Affordable Care Act was proposed by Nancy Pelosi and the Democrats. And the Affordable Care Act originally had a provision in there of a 5% income tax surcharge. That was the original Affordable Care Act that was proposed. Jared, as a congressman, got 17 of his colleagues, and he went in there into Pelosi's office and told her that if that provision is in the bill, they will not vote for that bill. She screamed at him, yelled at him, effectively threw him out of the office, literally true. Threw him out of the office. The next morning he gets a call from Pelosi. Jared, if we remove that provision, will you all vote for it? And of course, that's the part of the compromise you do. Yes, we will. But you know, no one knows that he removed an income tax surcharge. If you look at his role as a congressman, he was one of the few Democrats that voted for right to try. That if you're got a terminal disease, you're allowed to try medicines as an off. I mean, that's amazing. He was a member of the Liberty Caucus, the only Democrat in the Liberty Caucus in Congress. And as I may say, what Jonathan said about him and wanting to get rid of the income tax here in the state of Colorado is true. He also has cut the income tax rate. He's proposed a lot more, supported the provisions that do it. He cut the sales tax. He's cut the property tax. As governor, he is the first governor in the United States to enact a real effective price transparency provision in the state legislature. You know, here's a guy who's really a good governor, a good person, a good friend. And what I'm going to do, Jared, is I'm going to just start off with you. Last night we had dinner, and he wanted to talk about property taxes. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to throw it to you, Jared, on property
Sure,
taxes.
yeah, and by the way, so on income tax, when I became governor, our income tax was 4.63%. We reduced it twice at the ballot box. I supported that to 4.5, then later to 4.4. And now through the legislature, and I think it was either unanimous or close to it. We got all the Democrats and Republicans. It was either very close to unanimous, to 4.25. Little asterisk, that depends on there being a surplus. It could go away, but could go to, never going to go higher than 4.4, but at least it's 4.25 right now. Property tax, and I want to expand it to reducing home prices and the bureaucracy around building homes, if I can just go for a minute or two on this. So we look at kind of all the costs that go into housing. A lot of them are regulatory, meaning you want to build something, it might take you 2 years fighting your city or your county, lawyers' fees, delays, all of that stuff. And by the way, many towns would say you want to build, 40 units, we're only going to let you build, 18 on this plot of land. They talk you down, and of course you know what that does to price. We, in Colorado, have seen major increases in the cost of living here. Denver area, you're here now, about $600,000 for the average home, and that was $400,000 about 4 years ago. So we've seen a major run up in that, and near and dear to your heart, economics, price is a function of supply and demand. Demand is high. That's good. We don't want to ruin demand in Colorado. But what we have is artificial constraints on supply, meaning we don't let people build. Government stands in the way. So get government out of the way of letting people build has been our main mantra. Shout out to, I think if there's any folks from Montana, you all did a great job in Montana on this, Governor Gianforte and our group there, and we did that here as well. So we let people, for instance, now they have the right to, by right, build an accessory dwelling unit on their property, multifamily zoning by right anywhere near transit, and we're for it, everywhere. And by the way, there's obviously legitimate concerns. People say, what about, do you want to get rid of zoning? No, of course not. You can't build a skyscraper in a residential neighborhood, but you got to lean into personal property rights. If it's your property, that people don't distinguish between the level of government. You can have tyranny of local government. Your city, your county, your state, or your federal government can be tyrannical about telling you what you can and can't do with your property. And it's an absolutely appropriate role of the state to say, you know what, we want to prevent your local government from standing in the way of what you want to do with your property, which in the aggregate helps increase the supply of housing. Property taxes, when your home values go up, 40% like they did in our state, that means that absent some kind of action, the taxes people pay expressed as the rate they pay. And by the way, we're the 48th lowest state for property tax, but still people experienced a 40% increase. We were able to work with the legislature several times. I think we did, I don't know, 3, 4 of these. We have one of our great experts, Lisa Frizzell. She's a former assessor. She can walk you through all this. But I think we did 4 different rounds of property tax cuts where basically we blunted that significantly. So instead of people experiencing a 40%, it all depends on where you live. And we suffer from, we've talked about this, over 2,000 special districts. It's a nightmare. But we blunted that and cut it in half for many Coloradans. And then we also capped it going forward, very importantly as well.
Explain how you capped it. That's really important. This is good.
Yeah. So we have, you all have your different systems. We have assessment every 2 years, and then that determines what you pay for the next 2 years. We have now said that it can't go up more than, is it 5.5% is the cap. And so let's say your property value goes up.
In any 1 year?
In any 1 year. We do it for, so it's 11% for 2 years, but it's 5.5%.
If it's 2% 1 year, does it get to go 9% the next year?
We do it in a 2-year cycle, so we only adjust it every 2 years. But here's the important thing: it doesn't reset when you sell your property. This is an ongoing cap. So when the property transfers don't affect it. You and I have had discussions about Prop 13, the good, the bad, the ugly. The bad and the ugly part I always highlight is it is in effect an additional capital gains tax on transfers. And so it prevents transfers from occurring. Ours, the transfers don't matter, so that's a good element of ours.
But also explain, it doesn't have to, 11% is not the ceiling, is not the average.
No.
11% is the ceiling.
That's the ceiling, that's right. We're about to have an assessment cycle where property values probably only go up, 3, 4, 5% in the state over 2 years. So that means that's the only increase people will experience, which is be below the rate of inflation. This has happened.
And if property values fall,
then the rates go. Then it goes down.
And then it can't start a new basing from there.
Yeah. So they go down.
It's much more powerful than just 5.5%. I mean, it's really an amazing piece of legislation that you've got there.
Yeah, thank you. We're excited, and we wish we had it 3 or 4 years ago before the last assessment cycle. But we do have it now, and it will help protect. It'll help keep Colorado, 47th, 48th lowest for property tax. I want to add one more thing on property tax. While we're very low for residential. We actually are not that low for commercial, and that's been a problem we have because that's a competitiveness issue. We're not high, by the way. We're middle of the pack. We're like 25th. That's nothing to brag about. We're not, but what we focused on is providing real cuts on the commercial side. And so what we have done, I think in effect, it's about a 20% rate reduction on the commercial side, phased in over 3 or 4 years. So that is very exciting to make our businesses more competitive.
And what you should do is you get rid of all split roll. There should be property, and property have one tax. That's all.
Yeah, that's politically difficult to talk about. Obviously, people are more sensitive on the home side. That's why that tends to be lower. But at least reduce that delta for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Jared, would you mind telling some of us here about your success with price transparency?
Yeah, and let me get into, by the way, why the delta is such a problem.
Go ahead,
it's complicated because you actually called me on this. We have this weird thing with these short-term rentals. Every state's experiencing this, but Colorado's so great, particularly in mountain areas. And so are they commercial or are they residential? Right? You have a apartment building that is commercial because there's long tenants there, but is a short-term rental a commercial property if it's 365 days a year, a short-term rental. It's competing with hotels and their property. So, we have these weird issues that exist because of this large delta, and there's no perfect way to solve it. Hospital pricing transparency. I mean, this is the fundamental piece, is if you believe in market-oriented solutions for healthcare, and I think many Republicans and Democrats do, and by the way, there's other things that need to be done in that space that also should be discussed. But a fundamental piece of that is people need to know what they're paying. And so how do we create it? And by the way, these ledgers at these hospitals are insane because they're charging, 18 different paying parties, 18 different rates for the exact same procedure. And until now, that's all been in a lockbox in the CFO's office, what they even charge, the 18 payers they have, the self-pay, this insurer, that insurer, everybody else. And so we open up that lockbox to make sure that, and we have Pat Neville here, our former Republican leader in our legislature who championed this, along with Danae Escar, now commissioner in Pueblo County, to have one of the first and one of the strongest hospital pricing transparency laws in our state.
And tell them how you do it. I mean, the collection agencies are not allowed to collect bills unless.
And President Trump, you might recall, did an executive order in this area. President Biden continued that work, but it didn't have enough teeth. It didn't have the teeth that made it happen. We added real teeth to it in Colorado, where essentially they have to do it or they risk their participation and a number of different things that they have to be able to operate their hospital. So it's got the teeth, and
if you don't display the prices and the estimated what's going to happen, the consequence, the quality. If you don't, there's no way you can put this bill to a collector and have them collect the bill.
Right.
So that's really, really important. There's no dunning of people who didn't know what they got. They go in there, they get a bill, and then they get done by collectors till they go bankrupt. And that's what.
Yes, your hospitals like ours are very clever and have a lot of lobbyists. So they're going to try, if you're talking about this, to water it down and create these loopholes where it's symbolic but not real and enforceable. You, as legislators, need to work hard to keep the real teeth in that bill.
Exactly. And it's really, really, when you look at it, healthcare transparency, there's 20% of GDP is in healthcare, and it's called Le Croix de Santé, which is the cross of health. For the last 40, 50 years, the U.S. cost relative to the OECD have been increasing dramatically, and U.S. healthcare outcomes in the U.S. relative to the OECD have been declining dramatically. It is just this whole cross of, it costs us more and we're having less life expectancy. We need healthcare transparency, and I believe if it's led through by states, and you've got some other states, Lisa is running this, Lisa Nelson just running this beautifully through. I mean, just phenomenal. And congratulations on being the first state to really get teeth into that issue.
And that's the main legislative pitfall. Don't let the hospitals talk you into just making it some symbolic thing where they don't have to, they don't have to do it.
And let me tell you, I was chairman of the board of Centennial, which is the flagship for HCA, for 3 years. And I can tell you, they know all those prices. They know all the obfuscation. You can have one hospital, the same procedure, and the differences in price are 4 or 5-fold depending upon which insurance company you have. I mean, on the clearance price, the transactions price. Same thing's true across hospitals, across procedures. It's just outrageous what is going on.
I mean, and what he talks about, this, this compared to our OECD countries, 20% of American economy healthcare, most of them are 11, 12%. This is a cancer on our economy.
Totally.
I mean, this is 8% lost productivity. By the way, if we had better results and we were all, super healthy and living longer, we might say it's worth it. We're not. We're middle of the pack on results. and we pay almost twice as much. And in our cases, whether it's businesses, individuals, government, many different payers, but it is effectively a very dangerous cancer in our economy that makes America less competitive.
And at 84 years old, I'm really interested in longevity. Believe me, that's just thought I'd mention that to you. You know, when you have less to go than you've had before, well, just joking. Tell us about some of the other initiatives you're doing in the state.
Yeah, so I want to talk a little bit about the work we're doing on the housing reform and how we can remove barriers. I talked about it briefly, but this is a hot area for many of you because how do you prevent the artificial scarcity? It's not if it was, you know, one of my favorite sayings, if it's easy, it would have been done already, because the people that stand in the way of housing might be some of your friends. They might be locally elected commissioners or city council people or mayors that say, oh, I know how to run my city and we don't want housing. Okay. Well, what that adds up to is, first of all, an infringement on personal property rights. If you acquiesce to that, you're basically saying that government can impinge on personal property rights. But in the aggregate, it adds up to artificial scarcity and making your states less competitive and making it harder to realize that dream of being able to afford and live in a house. I would add that we also, we have a very I'm not going to get into our whole fiscal lesson in Colorado because we have a very strange fiscal landscape. We have, you know, Tabor and a number of other things. But what we did in that whole reform is we not only cut the income tax, we also created a mechanism that will cut the sales tax in future years if there's a strong economy. And so it's not triggered this year, but if there's a strong economy, there would be a reduction in the state sales tax as well. We're about, I think, is it 2.9% sales tax, so it would take it down to 2.7. People pay more like a 7 or 8%, but that's because the locals have their own.
I think one of the most amazing things here in Colorado, there are 2,000 separate property tax jurisdictions.
That's right.
In Tennessee, we have 435, roughly speaking of that. And if you look at them within the state, now, we may be a low property tax state, but Memphis is not a low property tax area. And you look at why Memphis has not shared in the prosperity that the rest of Tennessee has had such bonus. It's because property taxes in Memphis are about 3 times what they are in Nashville. And when you get to commercial and industrial, they're way, way higher. And just keep people out.
And we have this disparity in our state, too. And it actually is particularly pernicious because here's the way it works. The lowest income areas with the lowest home prices effectively pay the highest rate property tax in our state. That's how that works. So you have some of the suburbs and exurbs near Denver. We talk about, for instance, Commerce City, that has some of the highest property tax rates in the state because the average home price is, I don't have it in front of me, but it's not the $600,000 it is in Denver. It's probably $300 or something, or $350. And so, you know, this is a hard one to fix. I haven't figured out how to fix it.
I've got it for you. We'll come to that.
Yeah.
Next. But, you know, when you look at it, when you want to go build a building in Memphis, not one building has been built in Memphis, commercial building, that does not go before the building commission there and negotiate abatements and tax cuts and co-investments and all that stuff. All of it's artificial, run by the abatement building commissions there on building. In addition to that, local jurisdictions, now there are 435 or so in Tennessee, they're all allowed to hire lobbyists to lobby the legislature.
Yes.
And they do it with property tax revenues to lobby the legislature against property tax payers. It's just outrageous what goes on in this process. What we're trying to do in Tennessee is, number one, have a limit on property taxes, like California, 1%. That would basically only affect Memphis. But it would affect Memphis and would really open Memphis to growth. And also on a growth per year, we have a 2% per year. But then it does change at the sale of the house. Okay. It'll rebase the price, which I like your way better. I like your way better.
And yours, because it's a lower cap, that's why it resets.
It's a lower cap.
A higher cap
that's
that doesn't
right.
reset.
But I like your way much better. The 5, and then it stays with the property forever. And then there are a couple of other things there, and too. They get rid of the split roll.
Can I tell you something else? This is a good idea in any state on property tax, too. We allow people, anybody can do this, I think, Representative Frizzell, you can effectively defer any increase on your home property tax to basically make it a lien payable on sale of your property. So let's say your property taxes go up 20%. You can say, I don't want to pay the 20%. You can basically borrow it at the below sub mortgage rates, to make it a lien on your property that's payable on sale. And so,
Or you can also call Tom Selleck.
well,
And he'll do it reverse mortgages. Just
there you go.
joking.
But did I get that right? Did I get that right, Lisa?
Yes, you did.
That's how that works?
Yes.
So I mean, that's exciting too. And now, does it take a little doing and is it hard to explain to people? But we have takers on it, and we were educating people about it. And I think that's another great way to do it. It's a. By the way, if you move as long as you're able to float the money around your state government from this account to that account, that doesn't cost you anything. So it's kind of, you can figure it out. But I mean, you have to float money to this account, that account. But we were able to do that.
That's great.
And that was unanimous too, I think. I mean, I think we got everybody to agree on that.
That's wonderful. I think this is the area, by the way, that really needs looking at next to price transparency.
Yep.
I mean, this is a huge, huge area. In 1932, just for the record, property taxes exceeded all other taxes in the United States, federal, state, and local combined, exceeded them by a factor of 3. Property taxes are huge. In Iowa in 1933, 34, I think 50% of all properties went bankrupt because of property taxes, and also bank loans, by the way, the banks that you had something called penny auctions, which all the neighbors, they go and sell the property to pay the bank back and to pay the property taxes, and all the neighbors would come around packing and with pitchforks, and they'd open up the auction, and one neighbor would say, I'll bid a penny for it. And they'd look around, does anyone want to bid a higher price than that? Everyone holding their hands down to their pistols. Say, anyone? Nope, sold for a penny. These were penny auctions, and then they give it back to it. All of you in Texas know this was what happened with John Connolly, by the way. John Connolly, when he went bankrupt, all of his friends went and bought all of his property back and then gave it to John and Nellie. It was wonderful. But property taxes are a huge deal, people. Huge, huge deal. And in the next 3 years with Alec, I'm hoping to convince Jonathan and Lisa that we should do a major, major reform of property taxes across this country. Jared, what else do you have to tell us about? I've had a client.
I want to share the work. So they mentioned I'm the chair of the National Governors Association. I think you had, was Governor Stitt here the other day from Oklahoma? He is actually the vice chair. He'll be chair in the future. So we're working closely together. And the initiative I'm working on there across every state. So first of all, as you can imagine, NGA, bipartisan, they're not going to weigh in one way or the other on this policy or that policy. But what we got everybody excited about, governors that is, and I hope legislators too, is for all of you, education is probably the biggest line item in your budget. It's like, whether it's 25% of your state budget, 30%, I mean, it's like the biggest thing you do. The question we ask, what are we getting out of it? How do we better measure outcomes in education, regardless of what you do, whether it's, choice or you're giving it to districts, independent of that, how are you making sure that we're getting a bang for a buck? And what does that mean? It means two things. One at the individual level, one at the economic level for the state. So at the individual level, is there a good outcome for the individual? Are they able to get a job? Do they have a skill that's relevant? Do they earn a good salary? Are they able to get placement after that 12th grade transition? And we're talking about whether you go to college or not, especially folks that might not be going to college, or if they are going to a 2-year, what skills are they getting? Are they getting the skills in high school that allow them to enter the workforce, apprenticeships, doing concurrent enrollment? So the individual, does it work for them? And then, of course, does it work for the private sector? And does it work to meet the workforce needs of your economy? And governors care a lot about that. You care a lot about that as legislators. When you talk to any companies in your state, the number 1 or 2 issue that almost all of them raise is going to be workforce. It's going to be 1 or 2 for almost all of them. How do we attract and retain the people we need to be able to grow and succeed? And obviously we, the state, you as funders of education, people involved, we want to make sure we're getting what we are, putting a lot into the schools. Let's make sure and measure and effectively look at the outputs of what we're getting out of it. So that's the work we're doing over the next year. There's not bills ready to run yet, but again, a year from now, some of you have sessions every year, there'll probably be some good, thoughtful work out of the National Governors Association to implement at the state level.
Yeah, and what I didn't tell you about Jared also, if I may, is he's put in 2 charter schools. When he was head of the education, you put in 2 charter schools.
I started 2 charter schools.
Started 2 charter schools, and has been an advocate of school choice as well. This is also very important in property tax reform, because it's not only how much you collect and how you collect it, but also how you spend it. And how you spend it on schools is really important, and focusing schools on teaching and getting the requisite skills for the labor force, for the educational process, is equally as important as how you collect the revenues. That's really important.
And I think another topic, and I hope this is one you covered, is permitting reform around energy. Secretary Perry has a lot of knowledge in that one. And this is, you may like, you guys may like oil and gas, right? I may like, which I do, renewable energy. But I think the key thing is we need to make siting energy easier in our country. I strongly supported the efforts nationally, and those are important because Colorado is a state where the federal government owns 40% of our land, U.S. Forest Service, Bureau of Land Management, mineral rights land. But, that means that we also have a state piece. So I'll just give an example of what we did. We had we have a Colorado Oil and Gas Commission, like many states. They did the permitting for oil and gas. And this was also bipartisan, either nearly unanimous or unanimous, we renamed them and purposed them, and with the support of all the energy players. They're now the Energy and Carbon Management Commission. They now cite geothermal. They cite deep well carbon sequestration. So all the stuff that they were doing around oil and gas, and they're very good at citing that because we're, I think, we're the fourth or fifth producer for oil and gas, something like that,
Yep.
Colorado. So we said, let's take all that knowledge and just make that same process if you want to do anything deep under the ground, geothermal, carbon sequestration, you name it. And so we are now moving rapidly forward with, in particular, and we have different governors association. Now I'm the chair of the national, and when I chaired the Western Governors Association, our initiative was around geothermal energy. And we have expedited the siting of that. We now have 3 potential geothermal electric plants. I expect that probably I'd be happy if 1 or 2 become a reality. Maybe all 3 will, but they're all doing the initial drills, test work, and we want to bring some of that geothermal energy onto our grid here in Colorado.
Can I switch you on topic a little
do
bit?
it.
One thing that's really been amazing about what Jared has done is not only on the economics and all the policies that we've talked about, he also has done a lot of work on legislation on ethics in government and ethics in legislatures, et cetera. And would you talk a little bit about what you've done on ethics legislation and how you put it in and how it's worked?
Well, first of all, I served on the ethics committee in Congress for 2 years. That was not very fun, but
No.
that's a good example.
But that's
of
where
probably how not to do it.
when it's in Congress, I think it's there. You're trying to make it as unethical as possible, and it's really hard getting everyone to agree on what's really good on ethics.
This is also dating from a number of years ago. I was involved. We supported a statewide initiative that we had a problematic process before there where our hardworking legislators are great, but basically they had unlimited gifts they could receive that weren't always disclosed from lobbyists. So we basically it was basically a lobbyist gift ban. Lobbyists can no longer give our legislators. It makes sense. It's obvious.
Zero
for lobbyists. And then it's other than kind of personal friends or acquaintances, there's a limit of $65 or something like that. So
I ordered last night when he paid for dinner. I ordered $64.99.
Yeah.
Was my meal, so he could pay for it.
Well, it makes sense because you don't have a limit all of a sudden. I mean, we had issues where it was like giving people like laptops, expensive equipment, and again, I always think that we have great integrity among our elected leaders, but at the very least, it creates the appearance of impropriety, and that decreases the trust that people have in the product they get, but obviously can also influence the outcome. So we were proud of that. We have, we also have a good open records law here in Colorado. That's always a balance, but anybody from the press, just at cost, you don't have to be from anybody at cost, which is low, it could be, depending on what you're asking for, $100, $500. Basically, any of the public documents that exist, people can demand and are produced. And then obviously the state is, to avoid frivolous requests, we're allowed to charge the hours it takes to get them the information that they need.
That makes perfect sense there. Anything else you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think there's a lot we're working on. I want to talk about our implementation of universal preschool quickly. And by the way, I see early childhood education, preschool, child care as part of the workforce solution. You and I were talking about one of the problems that plagues our country is a low workforce participation rate. I'm proud Colorado has one of the highest, but get the data from your state about your workforce participation rate. Many drivers of that, certainly tax drivers of that, but frankly, one of them is childcare and preschool. Our neighbor, Oklahoma, you had Kevin Stitt. They've had universal preschool for decades now. We didn't in Colorado. We didn't have preschool. Parents had to pay for it. We implemented universal preschool, all 4-year-olds. But here's the deal. We didn't implement it through school districts. We wanted to include community providers and private providers. So we implemented it where all providers, they have to meet the criteria, you can't have 50 kids with one adult, all the normal stuff. But you can be nonprofit, for-profit, and of course school districts. They're the single biggest provider.
Think of that now. It's not just government school. It's
That's right.
all schools they support for preschool.
Yeah, and the school districts, by the way, sued us over this. They wanted control over it, and they lost. We wanted to make sure it involved community providers as well.
This is very much like vouchers on the preschool.
Yeah, I mean, we don't call it, it's not that, that's a toxic word for Democrats.
Sorry.
But, because we do want to make sure that the health and safety requirements are met for kids. These are kids. These are 4-year-olds, right? You can't have 50, you got to have the ratio with the adult. The adult needs the basic training that you need. I mean, you want to have a light regulatory approach, but you want to make sure that wherever parents choose to send their kids are not in, jeopardy of life or not being addressed. So this is part of what we're doing for workforce. And I want to add this. This passed in our state. We're a politically diverse state. We're the state of, Lauren Boebert and, Democratic elected officials, very politically diverse. This passed with more than 2/3 of the vote at the ballot box. And it passed in red counties, blue counties, rural, suburban, urban. Parents said kids ought to be able to go to preschool. I think it's a great issue, regardless of the political dynamics of your state. There's now, I think, something like 11 states that have it. We went, and it's optional for parents, to be clear, and that's also on the parental choice. I mean, not every parent needs preschool for their kids, because some parents have the luxury of having a stay-at-home parent who can do that, and that's great. But especially if both parents want to be in the workforce, single-parent households, all of those, this is a necessity if you want to boost your workforce participation rates.
I think with this, we're about done. And what I want to do is just give Jared a big, big hand, please, for the wonderful job he's doing. And I want to thank all of you for welcoming him. And I want to thank him for coming before all of us. Two of the people I love the most on earth are Alec and Jared Polis. I have 6 natural-born children, and I have 1 adopted one. My number 7 is Jared Polis, and I'm glad you're all together now. Now, never break this bond.
Yeah.
You are part of Alec. We are part of you, and it's the future is ours for the taking.
Thank you all.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome ALEC Chief Executive Officer Lisa B. Nelson.
Wow, thank you so much, Governor Polis. It's been a pleasure to be in Colorado, and I know I am one of those people that's going off to, I think we're going to Breckenridge after this, so looking forward to celebrating in Colorado after the meeting is complete. I was actually born in Denver, Colorado, and my father did his residency here at the hospital here. And thank you, Dr. Laffer. You're a treasure and so great to work with. I think we came away with some action items. Alec's been working on education freedom and have our goal of 25 by 25. I think we're going to add Colorado to that list and get education scholarship accounts passed in Colorado. And I'm sitting up here with Governor Reynolds from Iowa, who's our lunch speaker today, and I think we might add hospital transparency to the Iowa list. So really, really exciting to get that. This has been a great breakfast session. I know we have a ton of work to do this morning. We've got the Communications and Technology Task Force in Capitol Ballroom 4, Criminal Justice in 1 and 2, HHS in Sentinel Ballroom 4B, and the Joint Task Force on Homeland Security and Federalism in Mineral B and C. At 11 o'clock, there's media training with the incredible team of former Speaker of the House Tim Jones and our own Lars Daleside. And then we will see you back here for the final session, our closing session, where we will have Kim Reynolds and a fireside chat and a breakdown of the Chevron deference decision from the Supreme Court. So enjoy your morning, and we'll see you back here at lunch. Thank you so much.